Let's talk about the business of the day as it relates to theater with your hosts, Darnell Radford and Mitch Weiss. This is The Business of Theater, a working title. Oh, it's the nosebleeds that are.
It's not. It's not. They're not even offering what they claim they're offering. Hello, everybody.
Fees. Yeah. Mitch, I know we're looking for a working title, but we cannot name the podcast The Business of Theater. The world as we know it has changed.
Oh, that's boring. At least we ought to. What if we have a musical title? Hey, old friends. No, I'm not going to go. We can.
You're stepping on my lines.
Go ahead. Okay. It's all yours from now on.
This is The Business of Theater, a working title.
I'm Mitch Weiss, and we're silly today.
Let's get down to business. Hey, old friend. Are you okay?
No, I'm pissed. I am sick of these wrong prices on Broadway. I am sick of being manipulated. I'm sick of these nonprofits stealing money. I'm sick of everybody. Anyway, it's happy holidays to everybody.
So, happy holidays, everyone. It's been 2 months. And so even though we haven't had a podcast, we have been busy. Mm-hmm. My partner and I have been chasing Sondheim.
And I've been avoiding him.
This has been the year to chase Sondheim. We saw a production of Into the Woods at Candlelight Theater in Delaware. It's a dinner theater. It's a really great space that gives you a 3-course meal.
Did they do the entire show?
While you see a show? They did the entire show. They did the entire show, and there were moments where you were like, "Oh, okay, all right, voices." It was a great ensemble, and the thing about Candlelight Theater is that some of the cast is also the servers,
right?
And so, in those moments before the show and at the intermission, those actors are serving you.
Well, that was what dinner theater was.
Yes, absolutely. But it's a nice space. It's this big barn that feels like it's in the middle of nowhere, and when you're there, you just feel at home in a way. It's like surprising how large their stage is, because sitting anywhere in the house, it looks like a stage that's not very deep. But we knew almost everyone in the show, so of course we were like some of the last to leave. And so when the work lights are on and the props are all pushed aside, you're like, oh wow, that is actually a pretty deep stage. But yeah, we saw Into the Woods. We also saw a musical in development, this piece called Silhouettes at Theater Horizon, and that is an interesting piece. There were a lot of good bits to that, and I can't wait to see its full production.
Where's Theater Horizon?
Theater Horizon is in Norristown, in Norristown, PA, on your way to King of Prussia. And so that was a really. They're going to do a full mount production in June at Temple University, at Temple Theaters. So that'll be interesting to look.
Well, I've I spent the past few weeks catching up on all the silly shows on Broadway. I went from Spamalot to Shucked to and then not so silly, actually, a rather nice production of How to Dance in Ohio, which I was
Oh,
pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed it. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
I've heard a lot of
yeah,
good
it's
things about how
not
to do
going to
the
win the
military.
Pulitzer Prize. It doesn't have to. I was never bored. There's a payoff at the end. The cast is phenomenal. That's enough. You know,
Yeah.
there are things about it. I've never liked coming of age stories. I'm too old to go through angst again as a teenager. But being that these are autistic performers on the spectrum, and it's about being
Hmm.
on the spectrum. There's a whole nother angle and twist to this that is educational, in addition to being entertaining.
Mm.
So I was, and
Wow.
the talent on stage was amazing. So I give them all kudos. Yeah.
That's great. Well, everybody add that to your list. Um, so you mentioned spam a
Mhm.
lot. So the last time I saw you in New York, we went to a diner and we had a quick bite, and we were meeting our friends to go to basically another
Yeah.
diner. So we end up at another diner, and across from us was Leslie
Oh,
Kritzer,
cool. Who is what a
the
star!
Lady of the
What a
Lake.
star! She was amazing.
Yes.
Um, I think that
Yeah.
role lends itself to people who are amazing because you really
Yeah.
you can't be in that role and not shine. You have to do something, but
Yeah.
it's your talent that shines, not what they wrote. It is your talent that is going to shine.
It was
Yeah.
great. I was apprehensive about like engaging with her, but she came over and talked to us. It was like she hung out, like we were just. It was like a hey old friends kind of moment, and yeah, it was pretty cool. But it was nice to talk to her because, I remembered her from
Hmm.
Beetlejuice. I saw when we saw Beetlejuice, and I haven't seen this production of Spam a lot yet, but it ought to be a
Well,
lot
this
of
is my
fun. I
first.
can't
I
wait to
was
go.
a Spamalot
Yeah.
virgin, so I wanted
Mhm.
to at least see what everybody had said about it. It's also, by the way, I so many people had talked me out of seeing Shucked because I'm the opposite of a fan of Hee Haw from television, and
Mm.
that's what I thought it was, and it's not. It's actually a very funny, witty, and that's New York wit. It just happens to take
Huh.
place in a hee haw kind of town with some personalities that are down home farm cornbread, but they don't dwell on the stupidity of it. There, and the music's good. And again, I was very pleased when I walked out of there saying, okay, I went in with the lowest of expectations and I came out having a really good time. But the
That's
show's going to
great.
close, but then it will tour and make gazillions because it is an audience pleaser.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm proud of them for surviving the New York cynicism that we
Mm.
tend to put on things that aren't Sondheim.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, you know, Going back to Sondheim, we also saw the Frogs,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
adapted musical um, by Stephen Sondheim and
Nathan Lane.
Bert. Yeah, and Bert
That's
Shevelove,
Chevalov,
right?
right?
Yeah, it was interesting. That was the first time I'd ever been to Jazz at Lincoln
Oh,
Center.
cool. I've seen a few things.
Beautiful
It's
spaces.
magnificent, and
It's just I can't believe like if they're trying to think about what to do with these vacated high rises, these office buildings. That
oh, that would, yeah,
you
but
know,
that's not cheap. I mean,
I know,
it's
I know, but could you
listening to
imagine?
music, listening to jazz, and sometimes cabaret artists in that space is just it's
Hmm.
just chilling. It's really
Yeah,
beautiful. They did a they
yeah,
every now and then. I mean, this is why we live in New York. No offense to those Philly people, but even though we have some awful things here, we have the worst and we have the best, and it's getting that
yeah,
chance to have the best that makes this place worthwhile for me. That's why I love
Yeah.
the place. You have to find them. You have to go searching for these.
Come criticize the problematic mayors. Stay for Broadway.
Hmm.
I was just trying to find something that wasn't so great
Yeah.
about New York. It seems to be all the mayors will give them time. They will disappoint
Yeah.
you.
Well, it's set up for them to disappoint. There was the first 3 terms of Mayor Bloomberg were pretty
Hmm.
cool. I don't want this has
Yeah.
nothing to do with politics. The man knew how to survive that kind of pressure. It just
Hmm.
on a personality basis, he did pretty good. It was that
Yeah.
final term that was just one too many, as they always are.
Hmm. Yeah. It's like, did any of them watch Seinfeld? You got to go out on a
That's
high
it.
note.
Oh,
Just, you know what? I'm just gonna exit
that's
for
right.
now. You have 6 more months. No, no, no. I'm fine. I don't think I'm gonna
Yeah.
top this.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Um. So there's a we talk all the time about the goings on in the business, and theater is continuing to we can't sugarcoat it, struggle. Continuing, the struggle is still real in theater. Um, and as we look at the end of the year, where everybody is begging for pennies, to I don't know, hey, you have extra money that you want to drop somewhere and get a tax write off, which doesn't really exist anymore,
That's
I
right.
guess,
That's right.
because thanks a lot, whatever that administration was that changed the tax
Gee, I
code.
wonder who they were.
Yeah, so now those donations don't even matter.
Well, we'll take
Forget
whatever
it.
they can get. But the next question is,
I mean,
does who
please donate, of
deserves?
course.
And certainly there are, and I'm going to maybe no, I'm not going to name names. Well, I want to give one good thing out there.
Name names.
Vineyard
Name them.
Theater in New York. They are the only
Hmm.
large, successful nonprofit theater that during the pandemic, the people who ran it dropped their salary to $1 a year because they knew they had to lay off their staff. All the other major nonprofits paid themselves in full during the pandemic and laid off their entire staff. And now they're begging for money. I have no qualms about making that a general statement.
Wow.
It's angering, but at the same point, we want these theater companies. We need new works back with us. We need to be inspired and stimulated, and they're struggling. And if there are rich people out there who want to give them money, go ahead. I still want to see what they have to give. But right now, they are struggling. It's
Yes.
depressing. Broadway, here we go again. If you are a theme park like Disney, Aladdin, Lion King, Wicked, which is not Disney, the big guys, they are doing Hamilton. They're all doing phenomenally. But it's everybody else that's
Well,
losing all their money.
it's if you are an experience, you are doing well,
Okay.
and that is the difference, honestly. Um, I mean, like take Taylor Swift's Eras tour and Beyonce's
Mm-hmm.
Renaissance tour. The film, like those were experiences, and I think people turned out for them because they are
Well, it's theme park,
experiences.
and I don't mean to
Yeah.
downgrade them that they're not spectacular. Actually, perhaps
Hmm.
one of the best Broadway shows I ever saw was Madonna's concert in New Jersey. It was plotted. There were characters, there were costumes,
And it was
and
in
it
New
was in New
Jersey.
Jersey, and she still got away with it. So the experience. It's not that they're not wonderful, but Broadway ha, still has people trying to offer a new experience leading us into a cultural future. and
Yeah.
like perhaps How to Dance in Ohio, although I wouldn't put that up there with a new cultural experience. It's still an old-fashioned musical, right? But we're still looking for who's going to take us. You know, when Sondheim came up with Company, that revolutionized musical theater.
Hmm.
Where is our next revolution? And is it in the business of theater, which desperately needs it?
Yeah.
How are we going to survive when the government's not going to fund us? There isn't enough money coming in ticket sales to fund us. Donors
Yeah.
don't, and especially the concept of inflation, unless you're filthy rich and you can get that tax deduction, they're going to give what they give, but it's not enough. And the costs of theater are
Yes.
going up and up and up because we are trying to create experiences with sets and costumes and lights. And perhaps we're not concentrating on the script and what the story is. And
Mm.
and will the audience show up for that? We don't know. People still would prefer to stay at home in 35-degree weather rather than go out to the theater, you know.
It's
And
very true.
January is notorious for being the worst month in getting audiences out to see theater, but rightfully so.
Yeah. And like I always say, I'm an odd bird. You know, I actually, it's not just theater that I get out to consume. I actually do take in a lot of movies. I do go to the movie theater. It is funny that I have gone to the movies over the past month or so for musicals.
Mm,
I I, I went to see Dix the
right.
musical. Hilarious. Thank you A24 for being crazy enough to green light what you green light. These are experiences. When you walk away, you're just like, I don't know why that got money, but I'm glad it got money. It was a lot of fun, and see Nathan Lane in that character was just
Well,
just crazy. Like, it's fun.
it's still though, even that experience, theater of off Broadway right up to Broadway.
Hmm.
Most of the people I know outside of New York City uh, don't have the same cultural references I have. What we've been
Ah,
talking about, the shows, the people in them, I actually have friends, and they are friends, but they barely know Judy Garland or Barbara Streisand. Now it's an
mm,
age thing, but not to know them at all, then I have to question who are we reaching, right?
yeah.
So, and of course, everyone at least knows who Taylor Swift and Beyonce are, and that's wonderful. But already I know people, this is a horrible thing. After being the top of the game, Celine Dion, there are people who don't know her
Hmm.
name. And she's a superstar. She's unfortunately very ill right now.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
set, but that's where the conversation came up. Did you hear about? And they go, "Who's that?"
Hmm.
How quickly we're dropping these people that are so important to us. Then you talk about shows, and I wonder at what year does Sondheim become a thing of the past? Not yet, but a thing of the past.
Yeah.
But I have relatives who don't know who he is, never seen one of his shows.
I feel like we're just not gonna. I mean, yeah, and then that's when you realize how small our
That's it.
community
Exactly.
is. It's like, because we won't let him die. Um, we are going to celebrate Sondheim, but yeah, if it's not if it's not repackaged into
Mm-hmm.
some other medium, and then there's a reference attached to it, then yeah, the only people who are going to know are the tried and true fans of theater.
And that
So
percentage of the population has unfortunately stayed pretty um, even the wrong word, stayed at the same percentage point since I was a little baby.
Mm-hmm.
We no matter what marketing
Yeah.
we've done, it doesn't get past that 22% mark of people who have seen
Yeah.
any theater anywhere from high school to Broadway. And that's just in the New York area. So it must be much less outside of New York.
And the
Yeah.
Midwest and
So we
everywhere. Yeah.
yeah, it's nice. Maybe we take that as a pat on the back that quote unquote we're special. Nah, you know
No, we're just on the
that's
East
it.
Coast.
Well, the same thing. The Tony
And it,
Awards, when they talk about who watches it, it's New York and
mhm.
L.A. is second, and in between,
Yeah.
just a handful of theater lovers who want to move to New York. That's it.
It's so interesting, and it's like and then you start to question, like, but all of these students worked so hard. They went through so many years of
Mm-hmm.
training, and they're still like a very tiny minority of
Right.
society. And then at the same time, we also realize the value of entertainment, of media, during the pandemic. And it doesn't translate that the the media that we're consuming now, that's on like cable television, the stuff that's really heady, that's making us think, that's really moving us, and like if we had a water cooler, we would just stand there and wait for somebody to show up so we can talk about it. It's because those actors came from
Right.
theater, and so if you don't support that pipeline, and so you don't make it accessible to go to a theater program, to be in a theater program, to rise to that level, to get into local theater, regional theater, and then rise up those levels to get
and
into
and
television.
the current financing. I mean, again, we're not going to concentrate negatively, but in
Hmm.
September alone, 8 theater companies, long-standing theater companies in Seattle, Washington, closed permanently. 8 in 1 month.
Wow.
And can we afford? I understand you whittle it down. The pandemic said we don't need as many theaters. Maybe these theaters were not doing well as well, or presenting what the community wanted. I don't believe that. I think it had more
Yeah.
to do with the fact there wasn't the audience. We were coming out of the pandemic, and they didn't have the buffer zone that universities keep, so that they don't go under, and they charge $1 billion. And theater can't charge $1 billion. We won't go. Broadway, we're complaining
Mm.
about it left and right when the prices are as high as they are. You know,
Hmm.
and people will come to New York and they'll see one show because that's all they can afford. You bring a family and you're spending $1,000. That's ridiculous. It's a theater piece. It's not $1,000 of your life, and yet they get it. The Lion Kings, the Hamiltons, the Wicked, people will spend it. I don't know who they are
Did you?
because none of my friends will.
Was it a text I sent you that was about the uh, the household income
Yeah,
of Broadway
that
goers?
didn't seem right
This
to me. It just
I
felt like it
know.
was somebody made a mistake.
I'm gonna find that again. And it was Theater
Yeah,
Mania
I'm
story of
sorry.
the week.
Somebody's
The
the way they did whatever their research was doesn't sound right.
the average Broadway theater goer earns a household income of $271,277 a year.
And of course, I don't know any of them. I mean,
Yeah.
how could that be?
Are they counting everybody? Is that everybody waiting in
Yeah,
TKTS
really.
lines?
How about all of us who now and then get comps? You know,
Yeah, or show
yeah,
score or today ticks, or like the people who are in the lotteries, like, Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where that came from. Well, actually, it said the Broadway League had released its annual demographics report. So the Broadway
Yeah,
League
that's the League of
um,
Producers. Um,
put that
I don't
together.
know. I mean, if that's true,
Yeah.
then it really has become so elitist. Now, on the other hand, they do offer $40 tickets to most Broadway shows, so you have the wide range.
Mm.
Someone merrily we roll along can ask for $900, $899, which is ridiculous, but
Yeah.
that's what they can get, and they still have a rush ticket, right? So somebody's getting in for $40.
Seriously, Merrily, I loved it, but just because you have Hamilton's King doesn't mean you charge $900
not not
a
not
seat.
just Hamilton's King, and you have Harry Potter.
Yes, and
Right.
Harry
I mean, come
Potter.
on.
Yes, absolutely.
Uh,
I know. I will tell you that the day that we saw Merrily, We Roll Along, um, it was a Broadway Cares day, and so they did the red bucket,
that's a charity. For those
and
who don't
they
know, that's a major charity um, for
Mhm.
Broadway charities. They're a source which spends very little on themselves and sends the money out to cancer, AIDS, homelessness, offers free.
Broadway Cares, Equity Fights
But
AIDS.
the Entertainment Community Fund does so much more. They offer free health care to people who can't afford it in any part of
Yeah.
the entertainment community. They will pay your mortgage if you're about to go under because something happened in your family. They will retrain you to learn how to use computers when you've decided you can no longer afford to work in the industry. They offer a billion services, but mostly medical research, which is amazing. So the whole community does whatever it can for them. Very proud of them.
Tell him Mitch
Yeah.
sent you.
And the flea market, we have the Broadway flea market once a year, which made over
Yeah,
$1 million this year in one afternoon at a flea market.
that's great.
It's amazing. It's wonderful work. It's very exciting to be part of anything they do. So anyway, you were saying the red
Yes.
bucket thing.
Oh, that day, there's a piece of paper that Daniel Radcliffe types on, and and then Jonathan Groff also types on it, and it's something original every day. And so they auctioned that off, and they only looked at the orchestra because the only people who can afford it
Mm-hmm.
is the orchestra. And that sheet of paper signed by all three of them, and Lindsay. Well, actually, I don't know if it was that day we had the understudy, and so I'm not sure if Lindsay signs it or the understudy signs it.
Whoever.
Anyway, that sheet of paper went for
Wow.
$15,000.
Maybe,
$15,000. Now
maybe
it
that
is,
median
you know,
income is correct. you know,
I mean,
it's just shocking.
they just they just they were just going to make a they were just going to donate anyway. That sheet of paper probably doesn't matter to them at all. They're just like, I'm going to donate fifteen
There you
thousand
go.
dollars. But that was great.
Yeah.
That was a great.
Anyway, but
It was great to be there. It was just exciting.
let's talk about uh, about let's shift over to the marketing angle because
Mhm.
this has been from my very first days in the business. I worked in audience development and press before I started to get into management. Um, we were struggling, and every theater company was sharing with each other whatever ideas they had and what was working and what wasn't working. We had critics who we had to worry about, who could, the New York Times critic could kill any show with just one word. Uh, Faint praise was enough to kill a show. And
Mhm.
we're always wondering about it. Now we hear that we're losing one of our prime critics out of the Washington Post, and they're not replacing him, which means that
Yeah, this is
the model, so much after the pandemic is changing. The model of even having a critic considering that the
Mm-hmm.
influencers online seem to really be the movers and shakers now. And do we
Yeah.
now? I do know as a press agent, when you have an opening night, you would invite, of course, all the critics. Well,
Mm-hmm.
starting about 10, 15 years ago, we had to include certain bloggers because they asked
Mm-hmm.
to come, they were willing to write something, and you didn't know who they were talking to, but you knew you had to invite them. Now it seems that you don't
Yeah.
need to invite the newspapers, you only need to invite the bloggers and the influencers. And
Yeah.
maybe that's what we now have to embrace. That the new way to go is, can you get Taylor Swift to say, I saw this show on Broadway, it was wonderful. They do it, Whoopi Goldberg does it on The View. Other people, Oprah,
Mm-hmm.
whenever she endorses something, Color Purple, Oprah saying, I produced it, that's enough to get people to go see the movie.
Even Morning Joe on MSNBC has us as a segment where they always have a guest from
Mm-hmm.
Broadway talking about a show now.
I think
Yeah,
these, you can question. Like I said, none of us really liked most of the critics. They some of them were really crass. Some of them were mean spirited, but so are the people who
mm-hmm.
troll online. They can be
Yeah.
very mean spirited. So,
Well, the trolls online are mostly bots, and mostly
are you sure?
uh,
I hope that's true.
I I think so, and I think people can't help but engage with them, which makes it worse because that is literally a machine. It might be someone who is just saying hurtful things, but the channel itself or the whatever the account is, that the account, you can trace it back and it's not real.
Right.
And so but it's out there, and all you need is to see a bunch of people click on it. And the thing that's so interesting is, like, um if something about it is vaguely relatable, or like or it's just smart, like it's a smart ass
Mm-hmm.
comment, and somebody likes that, and then too many people like that, and now everybody's like, oh, so they said, you know, they made a negative comment about this show, and like 300 people click like on it, and that's going to look bad for, even though this is a bot who
Right.
barely said anything,
Right.
you know,
But that's
there was a,
we've lost the fact.
yeah,
But and of course we've all been discussing this for over a decade. Is all social media would need to do is require people to be authentic people and to sign in under their own name. And if you do that, we
yeah, well, now they're doing the verified, but the
that's
thing
not
is, like, do
verified.
you want to pay
Uh,
it? And the thing is, what's silly about that is that, I felt the same way about the earlier Emory podcast, Rep Radio. I felt like it's going to be hard to ask anyone to find, to pay for Rep Radio, when for Rep Radio's, 14 seasons, it, no one ever had to pay for it.
right.
And so also no one ever realized that it costs money to produce Rep Radio. And so and so they just assumed that it was happening on its own. And so how is that going to work? You
It's
know, I don't I don't understand how. I mean, that's the
but
thing.
and
It's hard to say for something that you never paid for, now you have to pay
right.
for it, because you're, especially when it's a social media site like Facebook, for example, like, you're already criticizing it now and it's free to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, and they're doing so much behind the scenes you know nothing about. Like, every time they send you, like, here's our new privacy statement, you're like, click, 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 click. You want to get through it so you can get back to whatever nonsense you're doing there. All of that, like, you don't even realize all of that costs money. But because you got it for free, you can't conceive of paying for that
Right.
ever.
Well, but it's not, and that's one aspect. The other aspect to this is once we can't be sure who's talking. See, the newspapers, the Washington Post, New York Times, even small hometown newspapers, there's an editor who knows who's writing the article. Their name is on the article. And if they say,
Hmm.
I hated the high school version of Hello Dolly I just saw last night, at least you know
Yeah.
who said it and that it came from a real person that you can either attack, agree with, or have a discussion with, or can be fired.
Hmm.
Once it's
Yeah.
out there on social media, and as you said, a couple of people like it or spread it, now you are only going to assume it started someplace legitimate. And it may be a
Yeah.
completely illegitimate location. Someone writing a good review about a restaurant. It can be somebody's, cousin putting it on there.
Yeah.
There's safeguards that sometimes come with having reviews by the thousands. So within that, if you say, okay, I'm now going to ignore the best and the worst and find it somewhere in between as what reality is, or
Hmm.
but if 12 people write about a show, how do you know whether it's something you will enjoy? If they're just saying, "Oh, this is
Yeah.
wonderful,"
And what else is interesting about that is that so there have been companies over the years who have been very critical of the criticism they received. And so they're, they're like, oh, like there were critics who were banned from
mm-hmm.
theaters who couldn't even come to the shows anymore. And it's like, don't come and review us now. But now society is conditioned to wait for a review. So without them,
Right,
how are we going to do anything? Because remember, people are still sitting on their couches because nothing has moved them to create the urgency to come to the show.
right.
Like take for example, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm just using it as an example. The Wilma Theater is here in Philadelphia is producing Fat
Mm-hmm.
Ham. The original production of Fat Ham was produced by Wilma Theater in a virtual capacity during the pandemic, and so I'm I'm willing to bet that the people who were unable to make it to Broadway make up some of those people who are coming to see it at the Wilma now,
Mm-hmm.
because it's live, and maybe they saw the virtual production, and this is so much more accessible to them, so they're coming to see it. But it's because we already know that there's this long train of accolades and success for it. And so without that knowledge, like, would they have just come?
Well, it's always been a question of familiarity, especially when your prices go up, which is why Broadway has so many revivals or shows that are
Yeah.
based on movies, right? It used to be
Mhm.
the other way. Sound of Music, My Fair Lady happened first on Broadway, then it became a film. Now it's the opposite.
Yeah.
The Beetlejuices, I would go on, and I mean, all of these things that start as movies and end up
Yeah.
on Broadway because Lion King is the best example of Aladdin. People can take their
Mhm.
families because they already know the story. And I happen to believe, although it's probably a smaller group, that there's a group of people with a great desire to see something new, to just let some of the the creative minds in our society present stories that we haven't already heard. And it may be a much smaller audience, so maybe you don't need a giant stadium. But that to me is
Mhm.
how you end up with a Rent, which is a amazing, phenomenon.
Hmm.
How you end up with a Wicked. How you can have major hits with new ideas. But
Mitch, how do you document real life when real life's getting more like fiction each
oh,
day?
listen, I no longer believe that a year is that many seconds. I think that the number's wrong. There's a leap year.
525,600
Yeah, whatever.
minutes. Well,
It's
it's minutes.
minutes. Well, I think it ought to be seconds,
Yeah.
and the song ought to be elongated.
Yes, absolutely. Um, but here's the other thing I'm thinking. So you know, um, musicals on Broadway tend to do better than plays on Broadway.
Well, no, and I like to rephrase it. They can last longer because there's a larger um, tourist audience for musicals.
Yes. Yeah.
But
And
but
I'm
but
not saying that to like criticize plays. I'm just saying to say what is going to be a problem is the plays in regional
mhm,
theater that if they don't get if they don't have criticism and and adequate publicity, it's going to be hard for them
absolutely,
to reach their
absolutely.
audiences because you know it's always like we're sitting in the theater. We have read the play many times. We're going through the rehearsal process. We understand the play's nuances, but you're only going to see it once. So you need someone who can kind of sum this up for you in a way that says, go see it, go be a
But
part of this
and that's one of
conversation.
the largest criticisms of critics is that when they
Yeah,
sum things up, they can make it sound boring. They can make it sound too
yeah,
controversial. They can make it sound dirty
hmm,
from coming from
yeah,
their perspective when none of that could be
hmm,
true. And again, we're each
yeah,
different. You go sit through a 3 hour version of some play, which is very long these to sit through
hmm,
something like that, or
yeah,
a Nicholas Nickleby, which was actually 8 hours long. You had to sit through 4 hours. You had a 1 hour break for dinner, and you came back for another 4 hours. And it was one
hmm,
of the most spectacular theatrical experiences of my life. And it was, and
yeah.
the gigantic cast. So, what? How do you know that that is something you might be able to survive? Um, and
Hmm.
how? And one of the things that I always disliked about critics is like, bottom line is, are you telling me I should go see this if I like this kind of play? Or just tell me whether
Yeah.
you liked it or not. Instead, they write this literary piece as if they're trying to win the Pulitzer Prize in writing. And I come out of it going, I still don't know whether I should see the play. And that
So
drives me crazy.
I will say the attempts of showscore.com
Yes.
are basically that, where they say, see this show if you like, everyone who has seen the show is saying like, if you like fast paced, fun, nonstop laugh riot, come see this show. If you don't like to if you don't like belly laughs or
Right.
or whatever or the theater being close to smackeries, like don't come.
Yeah. Well, and there are, and legitimate, there are people who don't want their kids um, to see something that has certain topics or certain amount of words, certain words in it, and they're entitled to know that's there. Whether or not I think
Yeah.
that's a ridiculous thing to keep kids away from, but then again, I don't want a 4-year-old in my theater anyway, right? I mean, that
Hmm.
go to a theme park for that, not a theater piece. Um, by the way, just a historical note: until Disney came to Broadway with Beauty and the Beast, there was a rule for all Broadway shows. No one under the age of 4 admitted. It was at every box office. No one was allowed in.
Wow.
Disney came and legitimately they said, our audience, they're used to just coming with anybody. They're infants, and there were people who came to see Beauty and the Beast and they would breastfeed their children in the audience. And if you're sitting next to those people, what rights do you have? And that's where the problem was. Interestingly enough, now Disney has returned to no one under the age of 2. It took them. It took them yeah, really. It took them a decade to at least put some restriction on it. But it was a different. We also know until Chorus Line and Cats, there weren't long running shows. The best they had was My Fair Lady running 2 years, and that was a giant hit because there wasn't a tourist audience. It was a New York audience back in those days. And so lots of things have changed now that we're attracting tourists. It does become a theme park. How do you talk them into it? On the other hand, as a New Yorker and someone who loves theater, I want to go to those new plays and those new musicals to see what it's like. And if they can't survive, then my question is, why aren't you budgeting your show so that you don't lose money without having to be a long run? You can still be a good show and not attract a family audience from Iowa. So why is that not a different budget? And many people will blame it on unions. I do not. The people in the unions are making a living. They're not getting rich. So it's still the people getting rich are the theater owners who just ask for exorbitant amounts of money for rent and have large staffs that they pay for. They have high expenses too, don't get me wrong, but they're making the big bucks. And certain producers, producer of Hamilton, producer of Wicked, we don't have to feel bad for these people, right? But theater is still a different animal than opening a Hallmark store. And so the question comes back down to, what do we do without critics? Do we keep giving away free tickets for the Tony Awards, which costs shows a fortune? I will tell you, I worked on at least a dozen shows that only lost money for its investors because they had to hang on for the Tony Awards, in which they won no awards anyway, but they were nominated. They should have closed early because they couldn't find an audience. So there's back and forth. We have these debates, and every show is its own business. So now it comes down to how smart a startup is each show's producer, right? And unfortunately, we're trying to unify Broadway with the league and with the theater owners trying to say we all charge the same amount of money, we all have the same kind of expenses. And it's like, no, I disagree. But as you know, Darnell, no one listens to Mitch. That's going to be my new book. No one listens to Mitch. Shall we? We need to start singing Sondheim again.
And we start humming along.
And moving right along, what about, because you and I started discussing this theater company in England that is doing away with artistic directors.
Yeah, an article in the Stage. It was Manchester's contact to reduce output and scrap artistic director model.
Yeah, it's an interesting. Yeah, artistic directors really are dictators. They act as if they own the nonprofit theater. They make all the decisions that everyone's supposed to hop to. The board usually is hired or chosen, not hired because they don't get paid. They're chosen
Right.
by the artistic director to kiss their butt and to raise money for them.
Yeah.
So I'm being really nasty, aren't I? So if an artistic director leaves, the board, who has never had anything to do with running the day-to-day of the theater company, they're left with, how do we find someone to replace the person who chose us? And that's not
Yeah.
necessarily what theater needs, and that may contribute to what happened during the pandemic. So now the question is, the board deciding to get rid of the artistic director, who's in charge? The board? They're not creative people. So who does it?
Well, it says the move means artistic director and chief executive Keisha Thompson, who became the first Black woman to run the venue when she was appointed in 2022.
Just last year, let's be clear. It's a 1 year.
Yeah.
We knew we were hiring somebody to get the diversity in here, and now we're getting rid of her.
Yeah. I'm sorry we ran this into the ground. Let's give it to someone of color.
Yeah. And make sure that's right, who won't have a chance.
Who won't have a chance.
And that,
anything.
by the way, is a common theme around America right now.
Yes. So it says, when she was appointed in 2022, will reduce her work to 1 day a week from January and become director of contact events, its trading subsidiary. So they're not getting rid of her.
Well, they're moving her to the subsidiary, and we don't really know if it's events. What? So they bring in a cabaret singer? I mean, what does that mean?
I don't know, but when I saw the title, of course the title is a grab. They're going to scrap the artistic director model, and so that could also mean that they're going to reinvent it, think differently about what the role of the artistic director is. But my first thought was, this board has to really care about this organization.
They have to step up to the plate, don't they?
Because most of the time that board is just listening to what the artistic director says.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you can ask any regional theater how often they see the members of the board in their building that's not an opening night. And you'll get a lot of interesting answers. It's like, I know that they're involved in conversations and so on, but the people doing the work can't tell you the last time they saw a board member. Right. That says a lot about your organization.
And there are plenty, I'm going to remove that word. There are some boards that aren't even doing their due diligence by making sure that the finances are correct. They're not watching the budget. They're not making sure someone's not overspending.
Oh,
so
my
they go
God.
into debt.
It's like, I mean, think about a meeting that you thought should have been an email, right? And then think about a board who hasn't really been involved in your day-to-day, and they're coming to this meeting to get an update on how things are working in your organization. This is the meeting that they haven't had a meeting in 2 months, so they don't know what's been going on.
There are many people. There are many organizations. The board shows up twice a year at the most, if they're available.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they may not even actively read the emails. They're on the mailing list, and they might be part of the people. I'm sure if you can trail down and see who's opened your emails, and you find out that your board members haven't even opened your emails, that's it.
But the reason they stay there is because when you go at the end of the year, we need an extra $40,000. The board coughs it up. And that's why they're there. And it's a sad state of affairs.
We need more than coughing up money.
Well,
We need ideas. We need guidance. We need
Except they don't
leadership.
have it because they're not, forgive me, they're not theater folk. They haven't done it. A lot of people like to have, I'm on the board of such and such, for their resume. It not only looks good, it gets them into country clubs. They have something to
Give
talk
me
about.
some ideas. Mitch, I'm not a theater person. I'll never be a theater person. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
So what,
I just
Darnell, what
know
would you
that
do? Let's just say you're working for a nonprofit theater company year round, and
fictitiously.
fictitiously, yeah, I'm not trying to lock it in on yours, and you lose your artistic director, and you can't find one to replace him or her, at least not yet. What can you conceive of that would run that theater and do okay?
Well, if that were the case, if I was still at the organization and we lose our
Mhm.
artistic director, I would hope that there would be an immediate board meeting
Right.
um,
But let's
to
say,
discuss.
but I'm saying you had that meeting, you're
I
putting
know,
the ad
but
out.
hold on. Let me
Go
get
ahead.
there. Let me get there. First, I would want to know. We would want to get. I would want to get clarity on what the outgoing artistic directors was overseeing, was like had their hands in, and 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 then pose questions around whether that is the right thing to do moving forward. So, for example, if you have a development director who doesn't write grants,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but your artistic director is the one who is, facilitating uh, uh, the research and the development of grant proposals. That is something that you're going to have to think about, because you're either going to need another leader who can do that, or you're going to have to make sure that you have staff that can do that regardless of whether you have an artistic leader at the front or not. And so I think that would be an interesting thing that a lot of people would be surprised to find out, because especially for smaller theater companies, like, I mean, if my theater company was still in operation, consistently, like as a producing artistic director, I was all of those things, and that's not realistic.
No.
You know, if we never grow beyond this one person has his hands in everything, then uh what is the how can you gauge the success of this organization beyond this artistic
But that
leader?
is
If you don't build the
but
infrastructure
that
for it to
is
function
the
without it.
nature of our artistic director um, syndrome, in that
Hmm.
it's usually somebody who said, I have a vision of shows I want to do, and I'm going to put together a bunch of people who are going to fulfill my dreams. And I hate to put
Yeah.
it that way, but even the great ones, and there are many great ones with great vision and have brought us phenomenal plays, it it's all resting on me. If I take a vacation, the whole place will fall apart. And that doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. So maybe this notion of thinking,
Well, that sounds like founder
yeah,
syndrome.
but I think most theater companies have that. So now we've got to
Yeah, but
figure
a
out,
board
the
should.
board is hired by the founder.
I I know, but what I'm saying is that a board should know better. Once the founding leader has left the organization, they should make sure that this doesn't happen again.
And
We
my
can't have
thing is,
founder
let's
syndrome
start
again.
early. Let's say that even while the founder is there, the board should be
Yeah.
thinking, how do we train people? Do we have people on staff
Hmm.
who could become the associate and
Yeah.
then move up, as
Hmm.
opposed to being a lackey and just doing a particular
Yeah.
job? Or maybe they can do a particular job and be trained so that there's a nice,
Mm-hmm.
easy slide, or the artistic director has some help. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to be threatened by someone who knows what they're doing. But
Absolutely.
that doesn't seem to be the case in most places.
No, I also feel like you can sort of sense it, even if you're not working, directly in an administrative office. Yeah, you can sense it and see that it's called prepping your bench.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
you're supposed to prepare the people that are in your organization to rise in your
Right.
organization, and if you don't have a system that allows for that, then all of the people below your leadership are never going to rise to those
And isn't
levels
that,
because they won't have the
and that's
opportunity.
a large, in my observation, in my experience, it's one of the big frustrations of getting a job in administration in theater. There is no
Hmm.
concept of promotion. There's no concept of you basically you're hired, do this job. I want to see how well you do it. And if you do well, that's all you're going to be doing until you decide to leave. And then we'll replace you and
Yeah,
train somebody new just for that job. Now, there are exceptions, and
yeah.
I'm one of the beneficiaries of the exceptions, which is
Hmm.
why I believe in this
Hmm.
so much. To have somebody walk up to you and say, "Would you like to work in this other office for a while? Or would you like to
Yeah.
also learn this?" So that you have an understanding of not just press, not just group sales, not just box office, not just budgeting, not just production. How does a
Hmm.
carpenter work with a computer? You don't have to be the carpenter, but you should work with them. And you should,
Yeah.
I know in college people do lights and sound. It's not the same thing. That's not the way real theater works. But you want to work with your designers. You want to be involved in, at least show up at the production meetings, even if your job has nothing to do with it, so you hear what they're
Hmm.
talking about. And most
Absolutely.
theater companies don't do
And
that.
and to wrap this
Yes.
up, we are odd birds, Mitch.
Ah,
So we are odd birds. So here's to us.
who's like us?
Who,
Damn
damn few.
few.
And that's the
Of
business
theater.
of theater. A working title. I'm Darnell
I'm Mitch
Radford.
Weiss.
And we'll see you at the theater.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next time for another episode of The Business of Theater, a working title, with Darnell Radford and Mitch Weiss. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Share the podcast with a friend, colleague, or give us some social media love. This podcast is an Emory production. Visit us online at em3ry.com/TBOT. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at em3ryotm.